And greetings, one and all. Welcome. Happy New Year. Our first webinar of 2026. We're delighted to have you, and we'll begin shortly. Uri, good to see you. How are things?
Good to see you, John. It just occurred to me, I think we should start calling this 5-minute pregame the green room.
Green
What do you
room.
think? The green room. Welcome to the green room, everyone.
Always open to ideas. Always open to ideas.
Bill
But
likes it. Bill likes the green room. Welcome. Welcome,
we
Bill,
like
to the
to
green
warm
room.
up the crowd a little bit, get you ready for the big speaker or who's going to be joining us, Bill Josten. And so when you see the applause sign going on, make sure you give Bill a big welcome, everybody. Bill, how the hell are you?
It's a pleasure to be here on MPF Game Day, John. I'm doing great, thanks.
MPF Game Day. Who do you predict to win the national championship?
We had this conversation. We had this conversation in the green room's green room.
In the
I told you I had to stay loyal to the Big Ten and Indiana, so I was happy with the outcome.
Yeah, we were
now,
tied.
Now, if I could just get the Gophers hockey team to quit absolutely stinking.
Good luck with that. Good luck.
Yeah,
with that.
Although my alma mater school, University of St. Thomas, just went D1 like 4 years ago, and they're actually ranked in the top 20 nationally right now. So the fact that my alma mater is ranked higher than the Gophers right now, I take no small amount of pride in that. I think that's fantastic.
I think Wisconsin should be embarrassed, or Minnesota. I'm sorry, Minnesota. The Gophers. They should.
I'm actually
right?
the Badgers are in town a week from, well, not this weekend but next, and we're taking our kids. So I'll get to see at least one good hockey team play when the Gophers play the Badgers.
See, I think basketball this time of year. You're talking college sports. I think basketball, and we're not tuned into hockey down here in Florida, except at the pro level, where we got some good hockey at Tampa and the Panthers too. It's crazy how Florida's become kind of a hockey crazy state anymore. So yeah, interesting times, fun playoff series, and our topic today is talking about the Thomson Reuters State of the U.S. Legal Market Report, which is published annually, and our guest speaker, Bill, is among the primary authors of that report for many years.
Yeah.
Well, we'll talk about where you are now, but Bill authored this year's report, so probably knows it backwards and forwards better than anybody. So we decided we'd tap into him and see if he'd be willing to join us and share some of the highlights and its implications for smaller and mid-sized firms. And Bill, we're going to ask about your new job and what you're up to there as we do our formal introductions. Looking at the clock, it's 1:59, so we'll get started, folks. And again, thank you for everybody who's with us. We're recorded. You'll get handouts from us, the link to the recording. So welcome. We are glad you're here. So let's get started. And this is our opening slide, which is our placeholder slide. But welcome, Uri, our 65th webinar of the series we've been doing.
Amazing, John.
For folks who don't know you, there can't be many on today's call. What do we need to know about you?
Oh, well, this is my 65th time co-presenting with you, and it's a pleasure and honor, and I'm delighted to be here. We at Ames and Goff, we're national insurance brokers, and mid-size and small law firms are precisely what we do. So it's been a pleasure working with you, John, and looking forward to a good program today.
Well, Uri, it's been a pleasure working with you, and I'm surprised we've lasted this long, and we still get along and call each other friends. So
we do.
Excellent. I run these managing partner webinars, and we have our big conference coming up in a couple of weeks, and do a little consulting work on the side. So welcome, everyone. And our today's guest is Bill Josten. And I'm going to ask Bill to self-introduce, but I'm going to tease him and tell us what's with all these initials. And tell us about your career change, Bill. Big doings in the Josten world, huh?
Yeah, it's been 2025 was an interesting year, John. I was going to say of 65 of them, I think I've been a guest on at least 5. So I got a pretty good track record with Managing Partner Forum. I want to know how I compare to some of your other more frequent guests, and I want to know when my jacket's showing up for my frequent.
Be careful what you ask for, because we might start rating you and giving you star ratings like Uber does for its riders. We might do that.
There we go. The initials are accreditations that I've amassed because, frankly, we're a credentialist profession, and I like initials behind my name. The Esquire is I'm a licensed attorney, even though I haven't practiced in a while. And the ALPP and ALRAP accreditations are from the True Value Partnering Institute. I'm an accredited legal pricing professional and an accredited legal revenue assurance professional, based on a ton of coursework, writing, instruction, all presenting all sorts of things that I've done over the past 10 years or so of my career, which is kind of what you were hinting at in your lead up there. Just about 6 months ago, I transitioned into my current role as the Director of Client Value and Commercial Strategy at Honigman LLP. We're a mid-market Am Law 120 firm serving clients in real estate, private equity, transportation mobility, life sciences, and intellectual property. And I handle pricing and go-to-market strategy for the firm, based largely off of the other title that you have on there, my experience as the legal market innovations or legal marketplace innovation strategist for the Thomson Reuters Institute. I spent almost 10 years in that role out of a 15-year career with Thomson Reuters. And in that role, I was responsible for leading the global thought leadership efforts for corporate in-house counsel and law firms of all stripes and sizes. My joke was that if you had a JD or worked for someone with a JD anywhere in the world, my job at Thomson Reuters was to do thought leadership for you. So you mentioned the report. Actually, this report, that the 2026 State of the Legal Market Report, is the first one in 10 years I had nothing to do with.
Oh,
so
you didn't? I thought you had
not.
your fingers on this. Oh,
no,
okay.
This all came together
Then you
in the
can
time
be much
since I
more
left.
objective and less jaded than your previous appearances on the
I
program.
do know. Honestly, John, I didn't even have to. I didn't have to ask. I could tell by the writing style who wrote it. So I definitely have a perspective and a lot of background with it, and I'm thrilled to be with you today to share that and kind of talk to my thoughts, both as someone who's got a lot of experience with data, but also somebody who looks at it now from a commercially practical standpoint.
Well, what's interesting in this day, and who knew there was accreditations for legal pricing experts?
I did.
Who knew? Is this an organization you made up and kind of bestowed the award to yourself? Is that how that one worked? Or?
No, it's done by the True Value Partnering Institute. It's a think tank of pricing and legal project management leaders across the country and really around the world. So I have colleagues and peers that are ALPPs from Canada, the UK,
Interesting.
Australia, all over the world.
Relatively new stuff, I would think. We're looking at value-based price. We're going to talk about this a little later in the program. Value-based pricing as AI comes in and rattles profitability and all those good things. So we will jump in. Before we do get started, shameless plugs for our upcoming programs the coming year. The webinar series will carry on. Maria and I are committed to do this through the end of this year. I'm starting up a webinar series, given that AI is such a hot topic, and you'll see it in the data we present, some of it today. A fella named Tony DeSimone, and we're trying to equip leaders of smaller, mid-sized law firms to really lean into AI wisely, efficiently, ethically, and put these tools to work. And so we're trying to help firms integrate AI into the practice. Our big leadership conference, this is our signature event. You've been to this one, Bill.
John.
I think couple of panels.
John, yes, I think registration's open, isn't it?
Indeed it is. We just soft opening, and we are 2/3 sold out. So if you're interested in coming to this conference, don't wait very long, because it will sell out. And we cap it very intentionally to assure a very high level immersive experience among the participants. And so that's coming up. We do a fall program offsetting in Chicago in October. Details to follow. So a little bit about what we're up to as we look to 2026. Today's program, good strong registration. We had the Martin Luther King holiday for the U.S. firms, but things really kicked up yesterday. We have 120, mostly managing partners, smaller and mid-sized law firms from across the U.S., Canada, but more and more other countries throughout the world. It's really something. So we're going to do the live polling. People love it. We ask some questions when you're registered. We'll share the results of those with you. And as we mentioned, on-demand recording, share it throughout your firm. Don't keep this a secret. Let your partners, your colleagues know what you're learning through these programs. So 120 people signed up, and off we go.
Our
Yes,
first polling
Uri.
question. Our first polling question, as we do for every one of our webinars, for Bill's benefit and for John and I as well. How many lawyers are at your firm? Let us know so we know who's in the room, and we will tailor our comments to you. So let's see.
It hits our sweet spot, Uri, pretty consistently, and 25 to 100 is kind of how I define our sweet spot. Mid-sized firms, but look, a smattering of firms, fewer than 25 lawyers. So much of the data Bill's going to share with us is related to big law, but that doesn't mean it's not relevant and timely and important for smaller mid-sized firms to take in this information and act on it.
John, do you want to
there are
share those
opportunities
results?
here. Yeah, here are our demographics for today's crowd. So Bill, take it in. We have one more polling question, and we don't normally ask two during our setup here. But because when you registered, we asked some questions, we wanted to put a little context here to the types of firms here. Are they full service? Are they defense firms? We got any plaintiffs firms? So if you would, mostly for all of our edification, we can be more pointed with our input. Of these terms, which one might you use to best describe your firm's practice mix? We're full service, mostly business firm. We're a full service, but we mix consumer practices with business practices. So we got a really mixed kind of practice group. Not full service, 2-3 main practice areas for which we're known: litigation defense, and a boutique firm with a sole major practice area. And it's interesting, most firms on today's call describe themselves as full service or boutique, one niche. So we'll try to couch our comments in the context of who's on today's crowd. But boutique firms, one main practice area. We don't drill much deeper than that. What is your practice area? But that's how firms describe themselves on today's call. Bringing on the data. And Uri, I think this was your slide. We decided.
Yep. So when you registered, we asked you some questions, and our first registration question that you answered for us is, what do you project to be your firm's overall profitability in 26 compared to 25? So 7% of you said significantly better. The biggest group of you said somewhat better. A bunch of you said about the same, 42%, and somewhat worse, 6%. Nobody said significantly worse. As you see this data, Bill, and then John, what do you think? This is what people think the coming year is. A lot, over 50% think it's going to be better or significantly better. What do you say, Bill?
I think that makes perfect sense to me. I mean, we don't necessarily set our strategic plans going into the coming year with the intention that we're going to do worse than we did the year before. To the 6% that say somewhat worse, I imagine that they're not standing on their laurels there. They're saying, you know, what can we do to do at least as well as next year? And I think, you know, when you have when you're setting those directions, to say, you know, we intend to do things that are going to put us in a somewhat better position than the prior year. We'll look at some of the data. I think a lot of that is going to be driven on the back of, from a lot of firms, probably rate performance, just given historic trends, but there's also opportunities to grow on the demand and the practice side as well. So it falls in pretty much exactly where I would have expected. If anything, I would have expected somewhat better to be a slightly higher percentage.
Interesting.
John,
you know, I
John,
say,
you always say managing partners are pretty optimistic, aren't they?
And I love it. I think managing partners, firm leaders are eternal optimists. And we asked this question for over a decade, and it's pretty much the same. Close to half, if not more than half, of firms say we're going to do better. No one's predicting an off year. But I love the optimism. We've got some economy, political things going on, but for now, our participants are pretty bullish on 2026. So good to hear. We're going to try to help you improve your performance and be more profitable if you just take away one little tip, one little action item. So here's why we asked that question, describe your practice mix, because we kind of mirrored the Thomson Reuters report, and they have a whole chart. We'll share it with you on demand for certain major practice areas, up, down, sideways. And so I pretty much took that same set of practice areas. They're mostly business. I mean, you don't see a lot of personal injuries not here. Criminal defense isn't here, although many of our smaller mid-sized firms do that kind of work. But our question is posed is from this list below, and what your firm does in its context, what do you project will be your best performing practice niches in the coming year? 33% say litigation is going to be great. Corporate transactional, that suggests an optimistic, robust economy. And Bill, we ask you to kind of reflect on these numbers in the context of our crowd, firm sizes, nature of the practice mixes. And you said when we rehearsed, this mirrors remarkably closely the Thomson Reuters data in terms of where things are growing and performing best.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, John. I mean, we'll get into the data a little bit later, but one of the overarching themes of the report, and this is true throughout the course of 2025, that it was an anomalous year in that we saw both sort of your traditional practices and your counter-cyclical practices. And by that, I mean, or transactional rather than traditional, but the transactional practices, the corporate and transactional practices growing at the same time, you saw counter-cyclical practices, things such as litigation, labor and employment, bankruptcy growing.
Yeah.
And normally those are inversely related. So to have 2025 be a year where they're not correlated, but they are both moving in the same direction was very strange. And so to see a split like this, now, this is where we think it's performing best, but typically you'd expect to see an imbalance between corporate work and litigation work.
Yeah.
Either we think our litigation side is going to grow and corporate's going to shrink, or vice versa.
And real estate, interestingly, is a little lower than I would have thought here, given that we're in an upbeat transactional, it seems, mood.
Yeah, but the real estate market itself is really dicey right now, and I say that as a firm where one of our core focuses is strategic complex real estate transactions. It's a challenging area right now. So the idea that that's less than it's a single-digit percentage, to me that makes sense. It's a highly competitive. That there may be a lot of volatility in that market right now, but I don't know that we're going to see the type of transactional volume in that area that we would like to see, given the overall uncertainty in the market.
Here's the flip side to that question, where we asked, where do you see your firm performing most poorly from among these practice areas, and other far outpaces any other practice area. We don't drill down on this. Uri, I'll invite your comment to this one.
Yeah, well, I'll just point out, I think insurance defense is often on the list. They get squeezed every year and squeezed even more every year, right? I mean, this is just really a tough business. And as Bill said earlier, no surprise, real estate is sort of has been on razor's edge for, I think, a year or two at this point. So
I'd be curious, drilling down on the other, what do we got in there in that basket? Bill, is this what do you think of this data we're seeing? And then we'll move on.
It's tough to unpack what's in the other. That would be a really interesting thing to be able to kind of suss out a little bit, because other covers a lot of sins. So I don't know what all lives in there.
Well, and I don't have to name names within my firm if I say other, right?
Right.
I mean,
but I think Uri's point regarding insurance defense is absolutely true. My firm now does not do insurance defense work, but I worked with a lot of ID firms over the time I was doing consulting with TR. And when you look at the overall cost of doing business and how that has increased with, whether you're looking at CPI or PCE inflation over the course of the last 4 years in particular, along with the advancing pace of technology and all that other the rates that insurance defense firms are able to command simply are not keeping up. And I don't fault the firms for that. I fault the insurance carriers. But I think looking at it from a pricing professional perspective, and I've talked with general counsel at major P&C carriers, if there's an opportunity, and this gets into a conversation we'll have later, but if a firm were to take the opportunity to sort of revamp the pricing model and come up with kind of the iPhone option, if you will, you don't know that this is what you want yet, and present that to a P&C carrier in a way that provided predictability and cost control to the carrier, but also improved profitability to the firm. There's an opportunity, I think, to lessen the squeeze on the hourly rate side, and that's going to require leveraging technology and
breaking the pricing mold, and getting beyond the billable hour
for sure. And it's
I think there are opportunities. I have clients that are doubling down on insurance defense and taking the tack you suggest. Let's really become efficient, and this is what we do. It's a volume practice. We're going to leverage it. Others say, no, let's get rid of it. The profitability isn't there, and more firms, as we know, are honing in on profitability by practice, by lawyer, by office, by client, by a whole different metrics. And you used the term the other day, client right sizing. And taking a look at your top clients and make sure they're fitting well into your mission and vision for the firm.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's an ongoing conversation I think every firm should be having is, not just is the client generating revenue, but is the client generating the kind of revenue that allows us to make profit?
Profitable. Yeah. More and more firms drilling down on the profitability of those big books of business. And let's get top lines important, but profitability is probably more important. Uri and I were talking about the expense side creeping in here, and really revenues are up, rates are up, but our overhead is just really squeezing profits to the negative, even though our top line's growing. So we'll talk a little bit about that too. Hard to cover everything we'd like to share in just an hour, but we're going to try to cram a lot of stuff into today's program. So here we are at the 2026 Thomson Reuters report. We showcase this every year in the weekly. This been churned out forever, and I know many firms digest this, share it among partners, discuss it at firm retreats, the implications for our firm, where we sit. So, Bill, we ask you to kind of look through the report, and here's the key findings. We're going to send you this report, everybody, so don't feel you have to take pictures or anything. Key findings, we're not going to dwell on that so much. Bill asked us to showcase 4 of the graphs and charts contained in the report. So, Bill, talk us through why you think these are important graphs, what they're telling us, what the implications are for the smaller and mid-sized firm crowd.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would echo something you just said, John. Anything in the next couple of slides here, the key findings we just looked at, or any of the figures that we're going to look at now, those are screenshots straight from the report itself. So as anyone's looking, if you have a hard time reading the numbers, or you're not getting stuff written down, don't worry about it. It's all produced exactly as it is in the report, so you can just kind of sit back and relax at this point. And
you'll get a recording of this. You'll get the report itself. So don't feel like you got to do a lot of copious note taking or picture taking.
So with that, though, John, in terms of how I selected the charts that we wanted to go through, frankly, I leaned on some of the ones that were my favorite data points as an analyst with TRI for the last 10 plus years, and things that I think tell a really interesting story in general, but also for this particular audience. And this one, this figure 2 segment demand growth and the separation there, to me is really a fascinating concept for this particular audience, because you can see going back, this is from Q1 of 2024, but the sort of brighter orange line at the bottom there is AmLaw 100. So you may make an assumption looking at this, AmLaw 100 has historically struggled with demand, and that's really not the case historically. The data that this is all based off of, coming from Thomson Reuters Financial Insights, that data set goes back to 2006. So we've got almost 20 years of data in that data collection at this point. And for the vast majority of that time, the AmLaw 100 actually led in terms of demand growth. So here we see them consistently behind, and that is historically anomalous. That's really only been the case since the end of 2022, maybe the end of 2021, but certainly not more than the last 4 or 5 years. Now, granted, it's been a long-term trend where the mid-sized firms and the second 100 firms have been in the driver's seat from a demand growth perspective, but that's not historically been the case throughout from the end of the GFC, pretty much all the way through the end of the pandemic. The AmLaw 100 led in terms of demand growth. So when we see this pattern of mid-sized and second 100 firms being in control for demand growth, that is the historically atypical trend. But I think it's something for this audience that's really an interesting data point, and we can dissect why.
Suggests a shift maybe in the willingness of companies to give work to smaller and mid-sized firms.
Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
A shift in how they're using outside counsel.
In
Opportunity for smaller mid-sized firms. Yeah,
absolutely. In fact, it's something that we've seen so frequently that when you go and read the report, we actually named it a couple of years ago. We called it demand mobility, and that's exactly what the term refers to, is the idea of work finding a new home that had historically been at a larger firm, but clients started going, well, wait a minute, do I need to pay big firm prices
or
for this particular type of work?
So how does this survey define mid-law? What firm sizes are we talking about here?
Sure. Uri, I heard you there, and we'll loop back in a second. So, John, a couple things. One, to answer your question, and two, to provide a context data point. First thing, the context data point. This isn't a survey. It's really important to point out with this data, this doesn't come from a survey. This is not self-reported. This is all derived from a tool called Thomson Reuters Financial Insights. And what that is it's a tool, it's a benchmarking tool that plugs into the financial management systems of participating law firms. And I don't know the exact counts anymore, but it's historically been around 200 domestic law firms.
So this is Peer Monitor, basically.
Yep, it is Peer Monitor.
Kind of a rebrand of Peer Monitor?
Exactly, that's what it is. So it's about half the AmLaw 100, half the AmLaw second 100, and the balance of firms are what we call mid-size. So to answer your question directly, in a very roundabout way, mid-size is anybody who participates in the program that's not listed in the AmLaw rankings.
So, I mean, do we have 20, 30 lawyer, 50 lawyer firms in there? Or
I think the smallest goes down to about 35. So there certainly are some smaller firms. But having worked with this data for a really long time, one of the things that I can tell you is that it is absolutely directionally indicative of what smaller firms are experiencing. The numbers themselves might be a bit off. It's like if we were to talk about actual dollar values, smaller firms wouldn't necessarily recognize themselves in those dollar values, and the individual percentages. You're not going to see my firm's in the AmLaw second 100 firm. I think we're AmLaw 120, give or take. I'm not going to be able to say to you, oh yes, our demand growth was exactly 2.6% last year. I don't know what our demand growth figure was last year. I know it was not 2.6% because pretty much nobody matches that. This is averages within those segments.
Right.
So very rarely are you going to have anybody who matches the percentage. It's all intended to be directionally indicative for benchmarking purposes.
Or you wanted to jump in, and then I gotta move. We got so much to cover.
Yeah, Bill, and for context, and you've pointed me 2 important points. Number one, mid-size, second AmLaw is getting market share, it appears, from what we call big law, and the AmLaw 100. For context, and this is really gets at the question, Bill, what is, in just big round numbers, what percentage of the legal spend is the AmLaw 100 getting compared to everyone else? I mean, what's the number that most people work with? Just round figures.
That's a really good question, Uri, and I don't know off the top of my head in terms of, overall share of wallet. I part of why that's a hard figure to come to is we don't necessarily know figures. When you think about, percentage of legal spend, we can look at how much revenue goes into the AmLaw 100, the AmLaw 50, the AmLaw 10 compared to the rest of the AmLaw 200 or the NLJ 350 or whatever. And I will tell you, in that type of comparison, the AmLaw 20 blows away the rest of the market. Bruce McEwen of Adam Smith Esquire does a really interesting look every year where he kind of does, or at least, I don't know if he does it every year, but he basically does the calculations to say, if you were to swap out the bottom 20 firms of the AmLaw 100 for the top 20 firms of the second 100, what impact would that have on the averages of the AmLaw rankings? And it's essentially, it's completely non-factoring because the AmLaw 20 drives the averages in the AmLaw 100 so much. But where that number is a bit hard to derive in terms of overall spend is we don't know how much is going into internal legal spend on clients' budgets. How much are they spending in terms of legal spend internally that never has a chance to even go to a law firm because it's all stuff that's being handled in-house.
Well,
So
ACC
totally
has data around that. The Association of Corporate Counsel has some data about percentage of laws in-house versus out-house and trending around that. What types of matters get outsourced? What types of matters tend to be performed internally through the in-house legal department? Stuff like that.
So the typical figures between 40 and 60% is balanced between in-house and out-house.
Yep. Yeah, it's trend. Remember the DuPont legal services model where DuPont went to consolidate to some 400 outside firms down to what, 40, and they, made everybody put proposals and beauty contests together, and the thought was fewer firms, more volume of work to the fewer firms, and it wasn't always the big firms winning those beauty contests. A lot of that DuPont work, a lot of in-house legal departments paid attention to that. So it's interesting to watch the pendulum swing. As work goes in-house, outside, in-house, and I think we've seen that market shift, willingness of clients to give important, not bet the company litigation, bet the company deals, but important deals that might otherwise have gone to an AmLaw 100 firm to a good, strong boutique. The value proposition is exceptional. So this looks at those practice areas we looked at earlier and overall demand growth, and it's kind of rehashing what we've already talked about here.
Yeah, where you see those transactional and countercyclical practices, and they did a good job this year of coding those, where you can see a good mix on the positive side of both transactional and countercyclical being in positive territory and really very solidly in positive territory. To put historical context into this, for most of the period prior to the pandemic, demand growth was kind of plus or minus 1%. So to see the type of demand growth that we're seeing now it's really, really strong growth. And one of the things that's interesting about 2025, and this is highlighted in the report, is that it's a year of strong demand growth on top of a year of strong demand growth. Much of what had been happening since the pandemic was sort of a pendulum effect where we had a real big shutdown and then the recovery showed a real big growth, but then we couldn't sustain that. So it showed a real big swing back, and that pendulum sort of settled out by about the end of 2024 where we were back in positive territory. So we weren't real sure what 2025 was going to look like given the change in the U.S. presidential administration and global economics and the ongoing war in Russia and Ukraine and all these other factors. So we weren't entirely sure going into 2025 what it was going to look like, and it ended up being a very strong year, surprisingly strong in a few areas, real estate being one and M&A being another. We didn't necessarily predict that those would be as strong as they ended up being, but to see that mix has been really gratifying. So for those firms, thinking back to our polling questions, that have a mix, there's a wide opportunity for those firms that are boutique and sort of narrowed into one area. You got to kind of place yourself. Are you a bankruptcy boutique? Well, how are you planning for what 2026 may hold? And 2026 may be a big year. For some reason, Google has decided I need news alerts on all sorts of Chapter 7 and 11 insolvencies. I don't know why. I didn't tell Google I cared, but I still get a push about every other day of somebody filing for bankruptcies. My kids were really disappointed. They love Francesca's, and they just found out that that's going down. So they're going to the liquidation sale this weekend. But that type of stuff, finding those opportunities, I think is going to be a thing in 2026. Otherwise, the growth has been fairly widespread.
And this does reflect mostly, larger firms, business firms. We don't see any family law. We don't see any, a lot of consumer-oriented practice. I note in the lower left, all timekeepers, billable time, non-contingent. So, this is, mostly for the,
this is primarily B2B type practice, not a whole lot of B2C type practices showing up in this particular data.
We're gonna pick up the pace. What's this showing us, Bill?
So this is a really interesting chart. We talked before about the changes in demand. This is the rates that have gone along with that. When we talked about in our polling questions, do you expect to be performing better profit in terms of profitability? And I said, largely that's going to be driven by rates. This is looking at rate growth across the industry. And you can kind of see historically, particularly in the sort of internecine period between the GFC and the pandemic, that rate growth kind of hovered in there between 3.4 and 3.8% for most of that time. Took a big jump in 2020. That was artificial. That didn't actually happen. But then in 2022, 23, 24, 25, it very much did. And it has been on a pretty meteoric rise ever since then, where you can see we went from 6% to 6.6% to now 7.2% rate growth in that last 3-year time period.
And this is rates, not profitability.
Correct.
And
this is rates, and this is agreed
of firms is really squeezing a lot of smaller mid-sized firms.
Absolutely. And we didn't pull the expense data into this particular report because it's dense, it's really difficult to parse, but they do a good job of it in the report. So I would recommend that people spend a lot of time with that. But what I would note here is you're seeing even mid-sized law firms have now pushed up to 6% rate growth year over year, and this is agreed rates. This isn't this isn't rack rate back at the hotel room door. What goes on the rate card is your starting point rates. This is the actual agreed rate clients are agreeing to pay. So the departure from your rack rate to the discount that you're offering to bring the work in the door is reflected in here. So to see even mid-sized firms capturing 6% rate growth, one of the things I would offer to folks on the call is if you're still sitting at 2 to 3% rate growth year over year, I understand a couple of things. One, you've put yourself way behind the 8 ball, particularly since 2022 vis-a-vis inflation. You can see the blue line there is inflation, and we saw it invert with rate growth in 2022. Most firms made some pretty aggressive steps to revert that in 23 and 24 and into 25. But if you're still sitting at 2 and 3% because you just don't feel like you can do more, understand, and I say this as somebody who has to have this conversation with partners on an almost daily basis. When you say you feel like you don't, or you feel like you can't, that word is really the important word. You feel like you can't. So understand the nature of what's going on there and try and figure out ways to push through that, because the market is tolerating it. And even with that demand mobility in mind, you may feel like, gee, I'm getting a whole lot more expensive. To a lot of your clients, particularly in a B2B context, if you're picking up work from larger firms, you're going to be representative of a real clear value proposition. And this chart, this is a great transition, John. This chart, this net spend anticipation, this ties into that idea of rates. What this shows is when Thomson Reuters does a survey, this is actually from the client side. So Thomson Reuters does about 22 or 2,500 phone interviews every year with corporate general counsel globally. And one of the questions that they ask is, thinking of your overall legal spend on outside counsel in the coming year, do you anticipate it's going to grow, decrease, or stay about the same? What they do is they take the percent that say they expect it to grow, they subtract the percent they say it's going to decrease, and that gives us this net spend anticipation factor. So 35% of people in Q3 of 2025 said they expect it to grow. 22% said they expect it to contract. That nets out to a positive 13. So if they say plus 13%, it's not plus 13%, it's plus 13 percentage points net. So what this means is you're seeing a declining sentiment where clients are saying, we anticipate scaling back a little bit. That does not mean that there's necessarily less money out there for your firm. I had the same conversation with the leadership at my firm. I represent my firm, even being an AmLaw Second 100 firm with fairly expensive rates for some of the markets that we're in. We represent a real value proposition to other firms in some of our market locations, where we could be a 30, 40, 50% savings. And at the same time, I get squeezed on the other side because I know I got firms that are trying to push the other side of that. So it does tie in. And so I would say to the smaller firms, again, if you're having a lack of confidence around rates, understand where that's coming from and be okay being a little bit more bold.
Well,
And it'll be interesting to see where this comes out now in
this
this
is
polling question.
consistent with data we've been asking for years, Uri and I, to our different audiences, which is your anticipated rate increases. Firms have, in fact, been aggressive. 6%, 5% is the average. Some firms reaching as high as 10%. And the follow-up, are you getting those rates? Yes, overwhelmingly. So that should give you the confidence to go and assert pretty strong rate increases. You know, we had that inflationary period during the end of the Biden administration. Things have settled, but firms continue to be aggressive. They are getting the rates. I think the impediment to achieving rate increases are the partners.
Yeah.
The clients are more accepting. It's getting it through the partners who are nervous. And I'm with you, Bill, 100%. Uri, I think you'll fortify, push those rates and don't be shy.
Well, the other thing I would say, I'm sorry, Uri, go ahead.
I was going to say the rate negotiation is usually between the managing partner and the partners, not the partners and their clients. Go ahead, Bill.
Exactly.
And well, what I would say is, as a business professional at a big law firm, part of what my job is, and I task my team with this a lot. In fact, I've got 2 of these open in the background on my computer right now, where we're trying to build the business case for why the rate increase needs to be higher than it actually is. So we can look at data, for example, like figure 5 there that we were just looking at and say, look, the market is showing 6.5, 7% increases over the last 3 years. You had us frozen for 2 years, and now you're agreeing to a 2% increase. That's not sustainable in terms of the market. You are already behind the market in terms of real dollar value. 3 years ago, you froze it for 2 years, and now you're saying 2.5%, when compound annual growth across the market has been more like 6.6.
Well, here are the profit levers, and Uri, as we set this question up, I thought timekeeping would get more focus, better timekeeping practices, billing practices, because we've been seeing that as a focus, is to, let's get that time catcher contemporaneously, and the write-offs and the write-downs and all the leakage along the way. But rates is still where we're going to the lever we're pushing, and so go for it, folks. Uri, I'm going to ask our next polling question, which is the rate setting, just to kind of follow up on what we've already talked about. And last year, when we presented this program with you, Bill.
Yeah, we asked 2 questions. We wanted to know, are you asking for the rates and are you getting the rates? And if you look here, this shows quite starkly people were asking and people got the rates. So
well, this is the ask in March of 2025. This is the are we getting it?
Yep. So I'm sorry. Go back, John. 1 second.
Compelling, people.
Go back and look at those numbers again. I'm sorry. I spoke out of order, but John, look at that. This is what we were talking about. The 30%, 6 to 9, 12%, the 10 plus. And for most of ours, for context, this is, as Bill said earlier, this is rate on top of rate. Clients have been doing this for 3 or 4 years now. So this is real money. And by the way, John, that's why I'm not surprised that when we just asked that question, people said, oh, we're going to do it again. This has been working 3, 4 years in a row.
Has been working. We got AI coming in. So can we hold on to the rate increases on the billable hours? And we're going to look at some AI questions as we wind down. But as Bill suggests, if you're not pumping rates 4 or 5% a year, you're leaving money on the table and you're missing the opportunity because it compounds itself. If you it adds up over time. So worst that can happen is the client says, no, we can't afford that. And guess what? It's not so bad to fire a client who can't afford your bills. That's a good feeling, I think, rates. So there's some compelling data. Bill, this one strikes me, of those firms that imposed rate increases, are you achieving them? Half say yeah, just about every time. And 38% said most of the time. So there it is, folks.
If you don't ask, you don't get. And if you can build the business case to support the rate increase so that it's not just, hey, pay me more money for the same amount of work, you're bringing additional value, you're you're benchmarking it vis-a-vis the market. You're leveraging into potentially new clients where there's less price sensitivity. There's a lot of strategic ways to think about it.
Here's the billable hour expectation. That's been a slippery slide downward. The work-life balance seems to be real, and the remote work seems to be impacting productivity measured in terms of the billable hour expectation. There it is. Boy, that's frustrating to a lot of equity partners. To watch those numbers keep going down and down. Uri, you did a report with the New York group that said actual effective at rates was down at what, 1350 or something like that.
Well,
Crazy
that goes.
low.
Well, we'll get to the next data because this is, I think, for most of us on the call, the previous slide is pretty sad. This is probably even sadder, which is not only has it slid down, and this is where people focus on. And to answer your question in a long way, yeah, our Northeast survey showed about 1,400 collected. Okay, so that's a combination of the two. 1,400 collected because people are not hitting their numbers. I mean, look at this. I mean, look at the statistic. Almost 50%. Not hitting their numbers.
They're lower than they were 5 years ago, considerably
yes,
lower. And yet it's a vexing challenge. And boy, do we hear that lament. These kids don't want to work like I did when I was their age. And hey, this is why we have a two-tiered partnership structure. Good lawyers who don't want to go all in. Hey, we're trying to work with this, but it's very real across professions throughout the world.
Let's keep this in mind, though, as we move into the AI discussion in a couple of minutes.
Here's the leakage, this whole thing, and Bill, we talked about this before, is, all along the way, from the rate, the intake, getting that right, the rate you set, getting that right, getting your time properly entered efficiently and accurately and ideally simultaneously. Time tracking, getting the bills out, the write-downs, the write-offs, all these points, you're just giving away money. And if you could just get a little duct tape here and there, boy, that money all finds its way to the bottom line and has tremendous impacts. These little tweaks,
Absolutely. No,
add up.
You're 100% right, John. I mean, if you think about it, none of the calls on the firm, or none of the firms on the call today are operating at a deficit, right? Everybody's operating in the black to at least whatever extent. So any gaps that you can plug don't help you meet your obligations. They move you further into the black. So if you can plug gaps by reducing the discounts and putting better caps around the discounts that you're offering up front, putting guardrails around that, that'll make a difference. You'll have a lot of lawyers push back because they're going to say, well, I have to do that to win business. Great, fine, whatever. Where you actually see most money disappearing in firms, and this is based off of 15 years of research that I've done, is at the pre-bill phase. And I know I've talked with your audience about that before, but you look at it and go, God, this feels like it costs too much, and you're going to pick a number out of the air. I know a lot of firms, I won't speak for my own firm's experience, but a lot of firms either have very liberal guardrails around what they allow for pre-bills, or they have none at all. So they have huge thresholds or no thresholds at all. And one thing I would keep in mind for everybody is a 10% reduction on the revenue of a matter equates to a 30% reduction in the profitability of that matter.
Yep.
Because the cost basis doesn't change. Now, you could reduce the revenue. You could reduce the revenue by 10% and improve the profitability by changing your cost basis through leverage, technology, whatever. But if you're making a 10% adjustment on the pre-bill where the work's already done, the costs are already incurred by the firm, all you're really doing is taking money out of your own pocket. So anything you can do to reduce that only goes to the bottom line. It doesn't help top line, really. It doesn't help with covering expenses and anything like that. You got all that handled. It's literally money in your pocket.
I think, Bill, I see a lot of leakage at the rate setting, and partners, love their autonomy. I'll set my rate, and you must get this pushback at your job. You're not going to tell me what to set my rate at, Josten. I'm a partner of this place. I charge what I think is appropriate, and the autonomy, and that trade-off between the autonomy partners love and some oversight and some accountability on
I don't think there's
He's
anybody from my firm other
talented.
than me on the John. I don't think there's anybody from my firm other than me on the call, so I don't have to worry
I'm
about
going to
how
send a
I'm
link
saying
to
this.
this to your
But
boss,
well,
Josten. So be careful.
she knows I'm doing this, but no, I'll say honestly, I don't get that kind of pushback at my firm. We're fairly aggressive in rates, but we've steeped a culture over the course of several years, and I say we like I had anything to do with it. I've been here 6 months, but there's been a cultural development in the last several years where we don't get that kind of pushback because there are policies, there are things that allow lawyers some discretion. But yeah, I mean, that is certainly a thing. I'll say rate setting even aside though, once the rates are set, you can make projections for your annual revenue, and that's where the write-downs and stuff really start to have a deleterious effect.
I think a standard hourly rate schedule and at intake, if you're coming off rate, you got to have a reason for that. And it comes to an intake committee, or if small firm, maybe the executive committee. If you're discounting rates, we're all subsidizing that
Yeah,
in terms of our overall firm-wide profitability. So putting
most
in
firms
little
have a
checks and
discretionary.
guardrails
Yeah,
here and
most
there.
firms have a discretionary threshold. I know, I mean, 10% is usually pretty standard for a discretionary threshold. So you've got a standard rate schedule. You have discretion to up to 10% off of that. And after that, there's a process involved. It could be, whatever that individual process looks like. So there's some discretion to allow for comfort. But otherwise, although I also know firms that don't have those kind of guardrails in place, and then you've really just got pricing chaos.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting,
well-
you said it has ramped up in our culture over time. It's just worked into our DNA, our aggressive rate setting appetites. And in a lot of firms, our rate setting appetites aren't that high because we don't want to, piss off the client or whatever. Or you want it in there, and then
Well, I was just going to put a bow on what we were just talking about, which is the leakage concept, which is the 10% collar. I've seen that, Bill, also at a lot of firms. The problem is it's 10% on the rate, 10% on the pre-bill, and 10% on the post-bill. So now we're talking real money. And so that's really the problem. It's those guardrails at each of those levels. And gosh, at least have guardrails. I've had some clients over the years where an individual lawyer, maybe even an associate, will self-edit their bill. That is terrible. The pre-bill, then the partner, they don't even ask. So at least to have those some type of guardrails. So great discussion.
It's not working harder, it's working smarter and capturing your time and the discipline of time capture. And that's a discipline. That's a cultural thing too. We get our time in every friggin' day, track our time simultaneously with the matter. This is not end of the week, end of the month nonsense. Talk about watching money fly out the door. Contemporaneous time tracking is important. And, I love our friend in New York, or you know who I'm talking about. She's no nonsense. If you don't get your time in, and there are incentives, direct monthly incentives for people who do these things. And, disincentives or no rewards for people who don't. So that seems reasonable to me. Uri, you're going to take over this next polling question we have in our mix.
So there's a lot of talk about pricing models, and we have a question for the audience. Is your firm experimenting with new models for its services? John, put up the poll.
Yeah, this is a yes or no. Are you experiencing with new pricing models other than something other than the billable hour?
Right, and the question is large enough. We're talking whatever you want to call it, flat fee, value fee. That's what we're getting at here, which is alternative to the hourly billing. As people are voting in, John and then Bill, what do you think we're going to see here? We've been asking this question for a while too. John, Bill, what do you think?
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And firms have been getting away with the model, the basic billable hour model, and pushing the rates. That's been working for decades, working very well. Thank you very much. So now busting up this model is terrifying to a lot of lawyers and law firm leaders. Bill, what's your prediction? And I'll go ahead and share the results here. Most firms aren't tinkering with alternative fees.
No, I was watching it happen live there, and I mean, honestly, it would be fascinating to take another hour and just turn this into a roundtable discussion with the folks on the call. For those that are saying yes, what are you doing and how? and for those that are saying no, why not? And one of the things that I've learned over the years from I've been a pricing director for 6 months, but I've been in the pricing director sphere for about 10. And one of the things that I've learned is, one, that's a very open and sharing community, because the way my firm does it isn't necessarily the way it's going to work at any other firm. One of the pricing directors at Ropes and Gray used to be at Troutman Pepper, and he once said to me, I'll gladly talk to you about exactly what I do, because what I do doesn't matter. It's how I do it that makes it special. And frankly, you could try and do it the same way I do it, and it wouldn't work for you because it wouldn't work at your firm. But this idea of experimenting with new pricing models, folks, this is a shameless self-plug. Go out and Google me and find my writing library from the Thomson Reuters Institute. I've got articles from the last 2 years about the evolution of pricing in the realm of AI. And one of the big things to keep in mind, and this comes back to the conversation around productivity. Productivity ain't what it used to be. It's not the same measure that it was 15 years ago. Productivity, the way I described it, I described this way to the CEO of my law firm when I got hired, actually while I was interviewing. And even laying it out this way, they still hired me. I said, I care about hours, but only in as much as they drive. Well, I care about rates, but only as much as they relate to hours. I care about hours only as much as they drive revenue. I care about revenue only as much as it drives profit. If I can do something to drive profit that isn't dependent on rates and hours, then great, right? And I'm all for that. And so with my firm, we're looking at a bunch of different projects that we can leverage AI into. And frankly, I don't care what the hour requirement on it is. I may take what had been 10 hours of work for somebody and reduce it to 45 minutes. Now, that's going to do terrible things to their productivity metric, but it enables me to do a couple of things. One, I'm structuring the pricing in such a way that I'm maximizing margin on it. So what may have been turning me a 38% margin is now turning me closer to 48 in some instances, and sometimes even better, depending on what the leverage looked like on the matter. I'm also creating opportunity to do a lot more of the same thing. We do a fair amount of real estate work, and so the due diligence and things that go into real estate, we only had the capacity to do a certain amount of that because we only had so many bodies that could only do so many deals at once. And I hated sending work out the door. Well, now we've streamlined that process. We have the ability to keep much more of that in-house. So I'm not passing through a cost. I'm actually generating profitable revenue. Pass-through costs, they're rubber bands. There's no actual transfer there. But anytime I'm generating revenue, if I'm doing it with margin in mind, well, now I'm creating more profit for the firm. So I'm creating additional capacity to do that. The other thing to keep in mind is if you're sticking to the billable hour, as work becomes more efficient, under ABA ethical guidelines, you can only bill for the actual time that you spent on it. So if technology improves to the point where, let's argue by analogy, I'm an accountant. It used to take me 8 hours to do somebody's 1040. I can now do it in 2, but I would charge them $1,200 to do it. Well, is it not a $1,200 transaction anymore because I'm doing it in a quarter of the time? Should I be charging $300 now, or is it still a $1,200 transaction? The answer is it's still a $1,200 transaction. It's a question of how do I price it, and what sort of ethical box have I put myself into? So thinking about it that way really helps to shift the paradigm. And that's not to say whole matters, all client books, all that stuff, but even finding individual tasks that you can do that on really gives you an opportunity to flex margin.
Value-based billing models, at our fall conference, a lot of talk. We had a fascinating panel with some billing people like you, Bill, at firms and what they're doing, and this whole AI and its impact on billable hours. How are we going to train up our first, second year associates? Do we need all these paralegals? These are interesting times, and we encourage firms to lean into the AI, don't run from it, and learn how to play with it and start experimenting with pricing models. Because I think in 5 years, as you said, productivity is redefined. It's not based on input hours. It's based on value that you bring to the transaction or keeping me out of litigation or whatever it is. And but it's interesting. Firms still, many live and die on that billable hour. And as long as we can push through the rates, Well, it's working fine for us. So these are interesting times. And Uri, I'm sure you have some clients that are breaking out of the
Oh,
billable hour mold. I know I'm
it,
working with several firms that are breaking that billable hour model,
you
and
know,
you got to start somewhere.
I think bridging what Bill said in a slightly different way, and this is on this specifically on this point. If you aren't looking beyond the billable hour, what are you going to do when the AI takes your hours? It's that simple.
Yeah,
What are you going to
it is.
do? Are you going to make less money? That's okay. That's a strategy, but not most firms are not wanting of that strategy. So to get ahead of that and think ahead, because Bill nailed it on the head, which is if the hours are less, how are you billing? And I love the accountant's model, Bill, because you're right. Our taxes did not go down, and their software has gotten 100 times better than it used to be.
I think the clients are going to press this. The clients, firms, I talk to them all the time. Oh, we've tried to introduce alternative fees to our clients. They're not interested. They want discounted hourly rates. Those are not alternative fees, folks. Discounted hourly rates. Uh, but some of your clients might be interested, and I think they're starting to tune in and put a little pressure on their outside counsel to rethink how they value and price their services. Bill, you're right there in the trenches. What you do.
Some clients were having to pull along. Some clients are really pushing for it. I see a lot of RFPs saying, not necessarily giving us clear guidelines on what they want for alternative fees, but they're asking for them. And in other instances, it's, hey, we have this menu of services we intend to use your firm for. What will each of these cost? And we've done that in immigration context. We've done that in real estate context. We've done that in 34 Act contexts.
We're almost to the top of the hour. A couple more polling questions. We ask this one every now and then to see if folks are concerned about an economic downturn or some political machinations. And here's what you tell us this time. Come on, folks, vote early, vote often. And I'll end the poll, share the results, and compare this to what you said last year. We are seeing about the same, in fact, about the exact same as last year in terms of concern about the economy and political conditions. Uh, there's a lot of change going on out there, as we know, and law firms tend to react. And you've heard us talk about forward thinking and look beyond the billable hour and get ahead of your competitors and try tinkering with things here and there. Here's that same question in March of last year. And again, can you get much closer in those results? Almost a mirror in a year's time. I'm moving toward the close, guys. Thank you so much. We always like to round out with our little curious owl, our mascot. And what are you taking away out of this? And here's what we suggest. Share this with your partners. If you're having trouble getting the rates up, share this. If you're having trouble getting folks to think about alternative fee arrangements, share this. Don't keep it a secret, and it's available. So the articles you see, pass them along. And I find that can be very, very powerful to just pass along an article you pick up and let the partners think it's their ideas. Just plant those seeds. I think is a good thing to do. Value-based pricing models we talked about, transparency. Talk to your young lawyers, your support staff about these sorts of issues. They're interested in the future of the firm and that it's on the front edge of things, or at least not among the laggards. And we're saying, Uri, I don't know, you might disagree with me, that this isn't the year just to look at AI. This is the year to dive into AI. This is the year that you're going to put it in place, policy, training, all this good stuff, and really create a competitive advantage for your firm. I think the waiting game is close to over on this AI stuff. Bill, what are you seeing where you sit on AI? Uri, the same question of you.
Absolutely. I mean, we said last year that the horse is well out of the barn. Lawyers, the line for 2025 was lawyers never want to be first; they want to be first to be second. But the race to be second was already well underway, and it's even more so now. my firm is fairly advanced on this. We have an entire team dedicated just to AI and how AI is going to, we're not even talking about our back office applications, but forward-facing, client-facing work product type AI. We have a team dedicated just to that. And even at that, I feel like we're behind where the rest of the, well, not the rest of the market, but behind certain aspects of the market are pushing. So if you haven't started to look and experiment yet, especially for where this audience sits, there's a tremendous advantage to be had. But otherwise, it's going to enable firms like mine to come down and compete for work that normally we would lose on price to smaller firms. Because, like I said, I'm actively. I'll share something. I mean, this isn't showing anything too inside baseball, but I'm actively looking at types of work that historically my firm would lose based on price. How can I leverage technology and alternative staffing that I have access to as a larger firm that enables me to do it at a much more reasonable price point, but at a much higher profitability margin for my firm, such that it's sustainable?
We are trying to help firms integrate AI, and I work with a fella. I got a mosquito flying around. It's 78
Minnesota,
degrees.
they're all dead.
It's 78 degrees here. I mean, the mosquitoes, the humidity. So Tony, we're doing integrating into our weekly newsletter a tip that Tony DeSimone is authoring on AI, and it's really, the feedback's great. And this tip is how to avoid the hallucinations that are becoming epidemic, it seems, within the legal community. There's always some firms screwing up because they cut and paste whatever they get out of Thomson Reuters, because co-counsel hallucinates. Hey, co-counsel does hallucinate. You're not affiliated with them anymore. But here, I probably picked the wrong example, didn't I? But
hey, trust but verify with all of it.
Got to. And prompting is really important. And we're getting a resource out there trying to help firms integrate this. It's not just a big law thing. It's throughout the profession. Legal is going to be heavily impacted here. Uri, we're going to do a webinar next month. Same bat time, same bat channel. I think I want to do our compensation, trends in compensation program next month. And we just rapid fired ask the audience a whole set of questions around your comp model at your firm. Is it trending more transparent, less transparent, more formulaic, less formulaic? Do you have a comp committee? Whole bunch of questions, and just that's always a hot topic where firms are going with comp models. We're on demand, so you'll be hearing from us. Your feedback, we'd appreciate hearing from you what you thought of today's program, and we want to thank our friends at Nine Sale for their recaps. Our contact information, and Bill, thank you for taking time from your new employer, and thank Honigman for allowing you to do this for us. We really appreciate it.
No, they and I were thrilled with the invitation, John. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to work with you and Uri, and to be in front of this audience. Contact information is there if anybody wants to reach out and get a hold of me. I nerd out on this stuff. I won't share anything confidential, but I'll share a lot. So if anybody wants to have a conversation, please don't hesitate to reach out.
That's a hell of an offer. So, Bill, thank you. And I hope some of our listeners will take advantage. Uri and I are always happy to talk to you, of course, and you know where to find us.
Yeah, whenever I get lectured at law school, I always say I give a prize to the first person to connect with me on LinkedIn.
A prize? What do we get? iPads? What are you giving away, Bill? Starbucks cards? We don't want a Starbucks.
When I'm actually guest lecturing in a law school classroom, it's a little bit easier. In this case, it's going to be probably a very nice, sort of way to go type of a message. I don't have much to send. But
I'm thinking a nice little wrist jewelry, a nice little Rolex.
I don't make that kind of. I don't make John Renson money, John.
Oh, please. Hey, everybody, we're past our allotted time. Thank you so much for being with us, and hopefully we'll see you around the bend. Uri, good to be with you. Bill Josten,
good to be with you too.
Thanks again. We really appreciate it. Bye, y'all.